Hello, my name's Richard, this is We're Not Wizards, and today we're having a very quick or extended look, depending on how much I talk, because it's been a while since we've done one of these. We're going to be looking at the Amulet of Thrayax. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not sure. It has been created by Tom Truman, and it's been illustrated by Vincent Weiss. How cool is that name? That's pretty cool. Basically, welcome to Bleak Pyre. Now, every once in a while, well, on a regular basis anyway, at Bleak Pyre there is a festival, which is basically called Thryamania, where all of the various cults that run around in Bleak Pyre aim to gather as many of these little boys and girls, which are the poor little citizens, in order to bring them to their sacrificial altar. And in this case, souls mean prizes. So the more souls that you have means that you're ultimately going to win. And you're going to win this, which is the Amulet of Thrayax, which basically means that it gives you like lots of good luck for your endeavours for the following year. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an explanation of how it works. Yes. In general, the game is all about these little individuals, and you're going to be trying to move these little individuals from the various parts of the city onto your altar, and they count for points. Some of these people even count for more points because they are various nobles, which will give you even more points. There's two sides to each of the sections of the city, and as you can see, the city itself is divided into 6 sections. But on each side you've got an unprotected side, which is easier to wrestle the natives from, and you've got a protected side, which can only really take natives when the amulet is shining on your particular section. And this is your amulet here, looking very scary indeed. Up the top here you've also got the round tracker as well, which tells you where you are. So I'm going to explain to you very quickly how the game kind of works. So while yes, most of the game takes place on the huge expansive round board that you see with your resplendent with your various tokens, your actual individual actions are decided on your individual board. You've got your altar at the top here, which will contain your already kind of sacrificed kind of villagers, and you get kind of points at the end of the game for the number of villagers that you have. But basically a round is going to be split into 2 different things. You're going to have your movement, which is all based around your individual kind of cult token. Now you can only take actions on a different section of the board provided that your cult token is in that specific area. So for instance, I can only take actions in this area for my cult token is in here. It's the same if I'm going to move to over there. Now every time I move, I basically need to sacrifice one of my villagers that I've already kind of earned, and move them from basically from here into the graveyard for the place that I've moved from, and that becomes kind of important kind of later on. Once I have done my movement, then it gets interesting because I'm then going to start to delve into both of my decks here. As you can see, we've got a number of cards. Now we've got 2 styles of cards. We've got our murder cards and we've got our counter cards. Now they've both basically got the same kind of setup. As you can see here, we've got 3 different choices on what we can do, and the various tokens the various kind of movements will either going to allow you to kind of like maybe harvest an existing kind of a villager within that particular section, or move a section from one villager from one section to another. You can see here we've got this red marker here. Now that's important because what that means is you can only use that action if the amulet is pointing or is within the section that you're currently sitting on. And what do I mean by that? Well, if we switch over here, the amulet in the centre will move based on rounds, and as it's moving around the sections, then that becomes basically the kind of the point of focus for the amulet of Thrayax for that particular round. Then what that means is that the card actions that you see here in red will have a direct influence on that particular kind of area. So for instance, I've got a card here. This says I can move 6 villagers to your district, and what that means is that in this case, because that amulet is breathing light on here, I can take 6 villagers from this area, and if I was maybe, say, over here instead, I could move the 6 villagers into this section. Now, as I say, you've got 2 sides to the section. You've got basically a protected and an unprotected one. The unprotected, these will take actions for any of these cards. The protected ones are the only ones, those are the actions that you can take, but they have to be when under the kind of the amulet's kind of eye. You'll have options in here as well on your cards as you play to move villagers from one section to the other, to bring villagers from 2 external sections together. Literally, the game is all about moving as many of these people into the various sections as you go, and what that does in turn is that will allow you to then, when it comes to harvesting, to harvest the maximum number of guys that you basically have. The other option that you have on top of that is you have on your player board, you also have these inconveniences. And what these inconveniences do is they will basically, if you decide you're going to burn a card and not play it, then what will happen is you will place your inconvenience at the edge of the section of your board, and what that will do is that will in turn have an effect on that section of the board at the end of your turn. Once you've played your cards, you'll then get rid of your entire hand, get rid of them completely, and then you'll draw back up to your relevant kind of hand size. So what you're really wanting to do here is you're wanting to move these out of the reach of your opponents and move them within the reach of yourself, with the view of also trying to score some of the nobles who are going to be ultimately worth more points. You're going to be splitting up piles of villagers out of sections where your enemies might be. You've also got to bear in mind to make sure that you're protecting your own harvest as time goes on. As the rounds go down, the amulet will move round, so it's going to have an effect on the area that's going to be covered in the next particular turn. There's also ones that you can play which are going to switch the direction which the amulet might also be going as well. And that will have an effect on the various strategies that you have to play as the game goes on. Once you have played round to the number of rounds that you have played based on the number of players that you're playing, then the game will end. You will total up the number of sacrificial souls that you have managed to collect, and then the person that has gained the most number of souls will be declared the winner. As you can see, there's a fair size of board. Every player is going to have their own player board, but you've also got the huge main area of Bleakpire in the middle as well, so it's going to take up a relatively reasonable amount of table space. I'll be honest here, one of the things that I really like is I really kind of like the artwork that I'm seeing on this so far. It's very clear. There's a lot of work, a lot of detailed work that has gone into not only kind of every token, but also each and every kind of card that you can see. It's very, very easy, and remember that this is a Kickstarter game. It's very, very easy to go down the line of having kind of like some very basic kind of placeholder art here. But as you can see as we go through, there's a fair selection of different artwork which has gone into the game so far, and the amount of detail that you see on each of the kind of the individual section tiles, I must admit it's kind of pretty impressive as well. I mean, rules wise, I'm working off the PDF, so I don't have a kind of a finished rule book. From what I can see, it's pretty kind of well laid out, pretty easy to learn, and the only thing that's missing really is kind of like a crib sheet, cheat sheet, which I kind of fully expect in the kind of final production version, to be perfectly honest. In terms of learning it, it's actually not that difficult once you get around the kind of the terminology, what you're meant to be doing on each of the rounds. The cards themselves, as I say, they're particularly well kind of laid out. So it's not a case that it's going to be you're going to be kind of scouring through the rules, once you've managed to pick up. I mean, it's fairly obvious that this one here just means you're going to be harvesting a villager in a unprotected area, and you're going to be harvesting up to 5 of them. Whereas this one basically says, okay, you're going to be moving in from either side of the district that you're based on. You're going to be moving in 6, kind of a total of 6 people. So that'll mean you'll be bringing in 3 basically from kind of each side. And that's me just kind of looking at it and kind of guessing. So the iconography is kind of done well. It's fairly kind of language independent, so there's not an awful lot of there's not a huge amount of text that's going to kind of that you're going to kind of needing to be read, so you can understand what you're meant to be doing on your kind of your base turn. Game time, it's going to be a difficult one here because you have got a fair number of players that you could play here. I would say maybe a 2 or 3 player game, you're probably going to be getting round it in probably about an hour. Kind of more players than that is going to extend the individual playtime, which means you're probably going to be looking at maybe 2 hours upwards. But it's not... once it kind of gets going, I can see it kind of picking up pace pretty quickly, which is kind of which is what you kind of want in these things. So it's an evening game. It's not going to be a quick kind of sticking it down and getting a quick playthrough. This is potentially the main event for when you are playing. So this is Amulet of Thrayax, which is created by Tom Truman, and it's been wonderfully illustrated by Vincent Weiss, which is kind of like it's a kind of a point scoring movement area control, collect your kind of victims kind of game. It's coming to Kickstarter over the next couple of weeks, and this is just pretty much a preview of what you can expect when you play. Just to make you aware that we have been provided a preview copy that we're not going to keep, and we're going to pass on to someone else, and we've not received any kind of financial compensation for this video so far. But if you have enjoyed watching this, please like, subscribe. My name's Richard, this is We Are Not Wizards, and that's a scary looking person. Jigsaw pieces. Scary. But until the next time, goodbye.